Yeah.
The icebreaker.
That's always my thing. Like I can never remember any jokes that I hear.
Yeah. I'm always the same way. I remember one joke. I don't think it's appropriate for today's conversation, but we're live.
We're live today from Greenville, South Carolina. Hello, everybody. I'm John Goff. I'm Director of Business Development here at TrebleHook. We've got a good crowd. We had I think more people sign up this go around than I can remember, actually. So we hit a nerve with today's topic. Excited to have you all join us here. So just quick background on me. I came out of database and security. I was over at Oracle. That's kind of where I got my technology start. Before that, I was in the lumber industry. So I combined kind of technology and my construction background and wound up with sales tools for construction people.
Go figure. Yeah.
Go figure. Yeah. So I kind of feel like I wound up in the right spot. But yeah, I've been focused on CRM for the construction world for almost 7 years now. I was doing the math, and like in July, it'll be 7 years that I've been focused in this one single area. So hopefully I've learned a thing or two in that time. But yeah, nice to meet you all.
Yeah. And hey, I'm Chris Fay. I'm the founder and CEO of TrebleHook. And just started this company in 2021. It's attached to our call it sister organization, TPM, but lots of experience in running tech companies. And then prior to that, I was in the construction industry. So project manager, director of business development, and so a really nice background. And I know this whole kind of KPI conversation today is an exciting one. It's 2:00, so I'm hoping everyone had some caffeine after lunch, right? Because you start talking about like leading and lagging indicators, right? But obviously this is a topic that people want to chat about, and I know we'll have some time for questions afterwards.
Yeah,
we're going to kind of get into it today.
Drop those in the chat. We've got Mackenzie running the board today, so
yep. And a new podcast webinar set up in here.
We moved the room 90 degrees.
We did.
So we did a different look and feel. So we like to have fun, as you guys can tell. But today we really want to dig into just some of the important indicators, the KPIs. Also want to talk first about where that data comes from. Like when you're talking about reports and dashboards and KPIs, well, the data doesn't magically appear. Mm-hmm. So a means to capture that data and move your projects through the project lifecycle really is kind of step one. And then really get into some of the reports, the leading indicators and lagging indicators that Chris alluded to. I think of everything, I don't know why, in terms of a car, but the leading indicators are the things in front of me that I'm seeing while I'm driving, that's something that I can impact. And if I'm going to hit the guy in front of me, I can make a maneuver. And my lagging indicators are what I can see in the rear view mirror. It's things that have happened before. Both are very valuable. Both are very different. But the ability to capture that data, analyze it, and looking at both what's in front of you and then learns from your past experience so that you can strategize and plan accordingly is
every time you use that analogy, I think of the artist Jelly Roll. He talks about that the windshield is bigger than the rear view mirror for a reason, focusing on what's ahead of you. Yeah. But no, we had, I think it was last year in our webinar series, we were talking around KPIs and the difference in leading and lagging. And I would say that generally most folks are used to lagging indicators, things that have happened to us in the past. What did we bill? Right? What was our revenue? What did we do last month? What did we do last year? And really an opportunity to change your businesses is when you start looking at the leading indicators to success, which are actually ones that you can change, because lagging indicators, you have no ability to make change. They just tell you what happened. But leading indicators, if you start measuring them appropriately, you can actually course correct. And so if you start tracking the right lagging indicators to understand where you've been, right, the rearview mirror, but then really understand how that feeds your leading indicators, your forward-leaning ones, then you can start making fundamental change. And so I think today what's going to be kind of fun, we just did, I think our last webinar, we did a demo of the system. Yep. And last year, I'll call it more thought leadership per se. We're actually going to dive into the system today and show you in TrebleHook how we tend to think around, dashboarding and reporting. So it'd be kind of fun, like jumping in the system. And I know I'm driving. So this is
Chris is driving.
I'm driving the car.
It's dangerous. Last time I drove, things went really smoothly. We'll see. I think
I'll look out the windshield. You look out the rearview mirror or something like that.
And something to that effect.
We'll get it going.
Right.
But so before we hop in, I think a couple things that we're going to hit on today. Number one is just generally, and you mentioned it, John, is collecting the data. Okay. And then once we collect the data, slicing and dicing that is actually the easiest part. And what we see oftentimes in many systems, and it's not just CRM, but ERP and others, is if you don't have a structured way to collect the required information, you're never going to have the insights that you need to make the right decisions. So one of the foundational things that we focus on is how to collect the right data. And so let me just give you a quick example for a second. That way, when we go into the system, it's going to make sense. So, if I want to start looking at an indicator, like let's call it the what we have done in the past, or like what our pipeline looks like in the future. There's some critical information that I'm going to need to gather in order to build that forecast or that revenue insight. And this is really for any KPI that you're tracking in your business. You first have to really understand what data is needed to give you insights into that KPI. So if we just think about let's call it a construction or A&E firm, it's got a handful of divisions and locations. And, the reality is you're going to need to know, obviously kind of the project information. You're going to need to know what division it's associated with. If it's associated with a particular location, probably want to see some client information. You're going to want to understand the project value, the project amount. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today, because there's differences in how you can look at project amount for forecasting. And then you're going to need some dates. So if you think about building a pipeline or a forecast of sorts, or revenue insights, you don't just need the number. Right? You need to understand how to slice and dice that number, and then how to make that number time-based.
Right.
And so oftentimes when you think about a KPI, people underestimate the pieces of information that they need to fuel that. And so that's where, if we get into it, and I'm just going to share my screen here, and we'll kind of help you understand what we're talking about. But so we gave you a demo of TrebleHook last time. I'm not going to go through a demo today. But I do want to kind of share with you a couple things. So John, if we start thinking around building on information. So when we first find a job, like if we're hunting a new job and we just put a project into the system, the reality is we don't know all the details around that project.
Right. And you may know just one or two pieces. You may know the person you're speaking with. It may be a rumored project that you've caught wind of. There may be very few details. You may have shaken somebody's hand at a conference, and you just want to get something in the system to track it.
That's right.
That's the way I look at a lead. A lead is just not vetted out. It's a possibility. And you've got so many leads, and you're going to sift through them to kind of get to what your real opportunities are.
That's right. Yeah. And then you think about, like, once you identify that project and you start moving it a little bit farther in the life cycle, you can start learning more and more information about it. Now you might know, like a target amount, as the RFP, RFQ comes out, you start learning around when proposal due dates are and when the start dates are as you start moving it along. So I think that's a foundational thing to understand as we look at how TrebleHook at least views this information. Is every project we carry through a kind of a standard project life cycle. One of the things we talked about last time is that TrebleHook is hyper customizable. We say that we've gotten you about 90% of the way through the implementation just with our product, but that last 10% is customizing it for your business. So what do you call things? How do you move things through the pipeline? What are your divisions called? So one of the biggest advantages of the system that we have and being built, kind of our underlying engine, to the car analogy, being built on the Force.com platform, is we have this amazing and limitless customization ability. So just know that today, as we're looking through this today, we're showing you our demo organization. And then, but every project follows every pursuit follows a life cycle. So a lead, I just found out about it. An opportunity is something that I've chosen to pursue. I'm now in the proposal, RFQ, RFP phase. I now have been awarded and working through contract. I'm ready to submit this thing over into operations and accounting to get this thing started up. And then, I win it or I lose it. And one question that we oftentimes get is, every project does not just linearly go through here. So I might find a lead and then I choose not to pursue it. So it goes to lost. I might have gotten a proposal that I go ahead and get paperwork on, and I might go immediately to startup and one. Right. So the neat thing is how you can transverse between different stages. But the key is, as I move this project through the lifecycle stages, I want to begin to gather more information. And so we do that through our update stage button. So, this national codings project that I've created, you can see there's definitely gaps of information, kind of throughout here. I haven't really built a lot of, dates or financials about it. I haven't built information on who the project team is and et cetera. But, now I want to move this thing from lead to opportunity. So, hey, great. I've decided to pursue it. We're going to put this in the pipe and I'm going to start tracking it. So our update stage workflow, when I move it to opportunity, what TrebleHook does is it says, great. Now that you've moved it to opportunity, I need to gather some additional information from you. And so here it says, well, you've already told me the client and what office location this comes in. You've told me the project name. What division of your company is this associated with? So in this case, I'm just going to select commercial. You've already told me who the client is, and this is a new project. And you already have told me the estimated start date, but you haven't told me project amount yet. So cool. Give me a project amount, and let's just call it a $25 million project. Okay. So what TrebleHook does is, as we move things through the life cycle, it's going to ask us for more and more information. So this is key, right? We're talking about KPIs and reporting, but everything that we're gathering along the way is ultimately going to feed into the dashboards and reports. And you can't get there without collecting the information. So similarly, I'm not going to carry you all the way through this, but we then go to the proposal stage. Okay, great. What's the proposal due date? What's the estimated award date? Give me some additional information about this project. Yeah.
So I always say there's a few things going on here. Number one, the technology that you give somebody to use, they're only going to use it if it's fairly simple. And so really this aspect of TrebleHook is one of my favorites because it makes things simple for the user. So whether you're somebody who's a power user who really understands what you're doing, or you're a brand new hire, this is served up to you. Right. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to look all over the page. You don't have to click different tabs. The system itself is surfacing to you the fields that you need to fill in. So that's number one. That's the ease of use of it. Secondly, it's driving conformity and compliance and standardization so that everybody is doing the same thing the same way at the same time. That way, all the data gets in. So when I look at projects that are commercial division, a certain dollar amount within a certain date range, this particular project is going to pull into that report because you filled it in at the opportunity stage when you were required to. And then third, you've got the ability to once you have that data, to now look at it in reports and then visualize it on your dashboard.
That's it. Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head because, you got to, we talked about this last year, the three things that drive utilization and adoption of technology. One is giving your users something easy to use. Yep. Two is driving critical processes through the system. And three is having leadership buy-in and actually leverage the data insights. So that's kind of what we're talking about today. So, in other CRM systems and actually when we first started TrebleHook, we could not build on information as we were moving through the life cycle. And you actually had to go like hunt and peck. You had to go say, I got to fill this in and fill this in and fill this in. And it made it super terrible because you think about a business developer it's out in the field trying to
doing it on your phone or whatever.
It's like this is the easiest way. Click one button, answer the questions, and you're good. Yeah. So I want to kind of start there because what we're doing as we begin to progress projects through the life cycle is we're gathering critical information. That critical information is feeding into our KPIs. All right. So we've level set there. So what I want to do is I want to move into reporting. All right. So let's just hypothesize and say that we're doing a great job. Uniformity across our divisions and our locations, our business development team and our seller doers and our executives, and everybody's getting projects in the system. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I would just generally say, as you think about CRM adoption, whether you are a TrebleHook customer or not, getting people to track projects in the system is the foundational, most critical thing you can begin to do,
Absolutely.
right? Obviously accounts and contacts and all the various information, but if we just can figure out a way to start getting all of our pursuits in the system, it's now going to start giving us the information that we need, and now we can start making change. So just kind of a recommendation for you all out there. One of the gaps that we see in some of our prospects and people that we work with is, hey, we've got 3 different locations. The New York location does a great job. Michigan's information isn't great, and so-and-so's is okay.
Yep.
Okay. The first thing we have to do, get all the pursuits in the system, answering the appropriate information, and then from there we can build upon that. So now that we've kind of you've seen kind of how we bring projects through the life cycle, and you can see how we're asking for that critical information.
Yep.
And that critical information is key to building KPIs. All right. So if we're gathering the right information, now it's easy.
Yep.
Now it's just super easy. So what we do in TrebleHook is we go and leverage a reporting infrastructure. Okay. And the neat thing about how reporting works, reporting is kind of like one big Excel spreadsheet. And if you're not familiar with TrebleHook and what we do, I mean, everything is a website, right? So anything you see in blue, you can click on. So if I want to navigate to this client record, I can easily, navigate to the client record. If I want to dive into a particular project, I can click and dive into that particular project. So it's pretty easy to navigate through the system. So a report is, just think about it like a big old Excel spreadsheet. So all we've done is we've brought in a series of columns, which are those fields, right? So remember, as we were filling in information on the project lifecycle, we're asking you for division, we're asking you for project amount, we're asking you for the location and the client name. All we're doing is we're evidencing that in columns. And so what I've done here is I've basically said, in order for me to build some sort of pipeline, what's all of the information that I could possibly need to slice and dice this pipeline or forecast? And the cool thing about what we do is you don't have to go create hundreds of reports in order to get insights. You can actually get one report and then leverage our dashboarding tool to slice and dice that report. So I'll show you that here in just a minute. It'll make a lot more sense. But the very first thing I need to do, once I've got my projects rolling and I'm getting the mandatory fields, I need to go ahead and make sure I've got a report in place that's going to bring all that information together. So a couple things I want to share with you kind of just about the reporting infrastructure. So here you can see there's the office location, the stage, here's some project amount. And by the way, I realize this demo set is probably more geared towards like an E&R, a big old general contractor. So these don't let these numbers scare you. We've got customers of all size, but if you're not tracking pipelines in the billions, don't worry about it. The system.
If you're not Bechtel on the call or Jacobs or something, that's okay.
The system scales. And then you can also see I've pulled in some due date information around the proposal, the estimated award date, start date, et cetera. All right. So the first thing I do is I kind of build out my report and I gather the information that I want to gather. I can easily add filters, right? So, hey, in this case, I'm going to see all the projects with an estimated award date of all time. I'm looking for pursuits of potential projects. But if I want to filter this report and I want to add something I want to only see this division, or I only want to see it for this customer, or I want to see it in this particular date range, your ability to add kind of endless amounts of filters is there. And every time you add a filter, and I can actually, I can change some of these, I can change filters on the fly, which is pretty cool. If I want to see, estimated award date on the current fiscal year, or next year, I can do that. So, once you kind of build out your filters, you can just change them on the fly to slice and dice the information. Yeah, so that's a pretty neat feature.
I call it like moving the goalposts. You get it set up and you just kind of move the goalpost where you want to see, depending on what date range or what grouping, what division that you want to look at. What usually when I show a first timer the system and I show them the filters, they're like, wow, that's it. I mean, it's like, It's pretty simple. There aren't like complicated codes and there's not 1,500 different things that you got to do.
Right.
It's really just basic filtering that you've got a few filters. Now you can have reports that are pretty complex, but a lot of reports are just very easy and that you can build on the fly and that you can adjust them if you want to have a different view of things. Yeah.
So and I would say today we're in the scale of KPIs and deep data insights into your business on a scale of 1 to 10. We're probably going to get you to about a 5 today, because it's really more important just to understand the foundational concept and then you can apply that to your business. But once we're collecting the data, to be able to slice and dice it any way we see fit is super, super simple. So a couple other things just on the reporting infrastructure. I can actually edit in line. So if I'm kind of going through here and I'm looking at this particular report, I'm like, this lead is actually in the opportunity stage right now. This project is actually, environmental and not whatever. This project down here is actually, now it's only a $35 million project, et cetera. You've got the ability to do what we call inline. That says 35 million. You got the ability to do what we call inline editing. So this is awesome for users to not have to go into each record and make the particular changes. You can actually edit it directly inline from the report view and then just hit save and you update all the information. Yeah. So that's a super cool feature of the kind of reporting infrastructure that we have.
Yeah, Monday morning meetings or getting updates with the BD team. You're having a discussion and getting updates rather than having like spreadsheets all over the place or kind of static environments. You're able to pull something up that can be edited as you're having a discussion, and you edit the report. It's going to edit the records as well. So all of your project records are updated as you're going through this report. You're doing it right from the view. Everybody can view it and talk about it and make changes on it at the same time.
Yeah, it makes it super simple.
Yeah.
And then a couple other things you can do. You can subscribe to reports. So if I want to have this kind of, call it Excel spreadsheet in my email inbox, you can subscribe to it and review it. And I'll just say in general, we'll talk about this a little bit when we go into the dashboarding and reporting, but oftentimes clients are like, yep, I get it. Like, I understand how to get a report. I understand how to get mandatory fields. I understand how to get the required information and dashboards and reports. How do I use this, right? And fundamentally, what we want to do is we think about, oftentimes companies have Monday morning meetings or Friday meetings. You want to run your meetings leveraging the data. So when you can start running your meetings by looking at dashboards and by looking at reports, number one, that's going to give you immediate insights, right? Because this is real time into what's going on inside of TrebleHook. But number two, it drives utilization and adoption because your team knows that you're looking at it.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's where this thing of giving your users something intuitive to use, but making sure the leadership team's using it. So the very best thing that you can do is to, if you pick a couple KPIs and you have a visualization, whether it's inside of TrebleHook or not, figure out how to integrate that into your regular cadence of meetings so that it gets viewed and it gets talked about. And you will see the utilization and adoption of those tools go through the roof.
Absolutely.
Okay. So a couple of things I want to just hit on. So what you can see is we've got the way to slice and dice all sorts of information. The other thing I want to just generally talk about is forecasting. Okay. This is one that's a little bit tricky. All right. So John, we're in the software space and when we sell a deal, it usually has a close date. Like, when are we going to win it?
Yep.
And usually when we win it, we send an invoice out and we book it and bill it.
Yep.
Construction and architecture engineering is a little different, right? You got your proposal dates, you're sending stuff out, you got your award date, you might have interview dates. And then even if you win a job, if you've been awarded a job, I mean, heck, the thing might not start for 6 months or a year, right? Yeah. So there's all sorts of way for AEC firms to begin to think about how they track their revenue forecasting. I can look at it by start date, and that's going to give me more insights into revenue. When's actual revenue going to hit my books? I can look at things by award date, because that's going to give me what we would call booking. You're booking work. You kind of got your backlog of work being built. There's a whole billings tool that we have. I won't get into it today, but that helps you break the project amount down by monthly or quarterly revenue billings so that you can actually start seeing your revenue forecast month by month. It's a super awesome tool that we're launching in this latest version of TrebleHook. Today, we're not going to get into that. So in here, you can see I've pulled in some proposal due date, when the award date is, and the start date. So I can actually use this report to look at my forecast by start or by award. The second thing that I want to just call out generally is how we look at the dollar amount of a project. Okay. So every project that you have in the system is going to have some sort of project amount, right? So how much is the project? Well, early on, I think it's going to be X. Well, now I've delivered a proposal. It's actually going to be Y. All right. Well, now I've got a contract after value engineering and the project amount's going to be Z, right? So the reality is this project amount changes and shifts as we go through the project. So some of our clients, when you're early on in the forecasting world of pipeline building, just use the project amount, right? So I could just say, show me project amount by the start date. That's just going to give me gross project revenue by when that project is going to start. Okay. The more sophisticated firms, and when I say sophisticated, I don't mean to talk down to anybody that's not doing this, but to get an even tighter view of your revenue forecasting, you want to leverage in our system what we call go and win percentage. And go percentage is what's the chances of this project actually happening? And then win percentages is what's the chances of my firm actually winning this? And so when you combine those, and we have customers that have all sorts of go, no go, analysis that impacts weighting forecast. We have some people that don't use go percentage and they only use win, whatever it is. You can leverage these percentages to factor into what we call a weighted project amount. Okay. And so you'll see at the lead stage, we actually don't gather win percentages and weighted project amount. But if I scroll down the page a little bit, and let's just go to an opportunity, you'll see we got a lot of leads in the system here. At an opportunity, you'll see we've got a project amount, a go percentage. So this particular project has a 75% chance of going. And at the opportunity stage, we typically default to about a 5% win rate. All right. So basically that's saying that out of 20 jobs that you're chasing, you're going to win one of them. Okay. As you go to the proposal stage, and again, all these percentages change based upon your company's insights, but
they can be automated based off your sales stage or status, or you can manually commit to it.
Yeah. Just kind of throttle it.
Yep.
At the proposal stage, we're saying we got a 1 in 4 chance. At award contract, we're at 75%. So you can kind of see how the percentages shift and change. Well, in this case, I've got a job that's 187 million. It's got a 50% chance of actually happening. And, based upon it being the proposal stage, 25% chance of winning it, which means the weighted project amount of that job is $23 million. Okay. Now, it's hard to look at an individual project and be like, I don't understand how weighted project amount like hits me. But when you when you begin to aggregate all of these projects together, your weighted project amount is actually the most accurate way to predict your future revenue, because you're factoring it on these win rates and these go percentages. And so in aggregate, you're getting a much more holistic view of what your revenue pipeline is. Right. This is going to make a little more sense when I go into dashboards, but I just want to kind of foundationally have people understand that. So we want to slice and dice it by however our business is set up: location, business unit, division, client type, delivery method, whatever it is that we want. To build some sort of forecasting, we need to grab two things, and it's financials and some sort of time-based date. Yep. And so there's lots of ways that we can shake that. All right. So that's kind of the reporting infrastructure. All right. So let's kind of jump over to how we start looking at KPIs. So sorry, let me get this little Teams guy out of my way here. So let's go over to dashboarding. So dashboarding is pretty cool. So in general, again, a webinar, we got about 15 minutes left of presentation. There's so much here, right? One of the best things that we get by having that force.com engine, that underlying engine driving us as we get all the data security and the workflows and the automation, but we get an endless amount of ability to slice and dice data. And so our dashboarding and reporting ability, I put up against any piece of technology in the marketplace. So all I'm doing here, and then I'll kind of set the stage on dashboarding and reporting, whatever. You can look and see and view data however you want to look at it. You want to see in bar chart, pie chart, funnels, data, red, green, large, small, whatever. Okay. So just understand there's a lot of customizability out of that. So a couple of things I just want to kind of share with you. I'll kind of go from the top down. So the top section here is just a couple different ways to look at revenue forecasting, right? And so these are kind of leading indicators, right? Where are we going on our forecast? And revenue projections are the reason we're kind of hammering on this today is that it's one of the biggest needs of our AEC clients. Yeah. Ultimately, you need to drive revenue and the right type of revenue inside of your business in order to grow your AEC organization. There's all sorts of leading indicators that we look at, and we'll actually close on that a little bit today. But just know that kind of revenue forecasting is one of the big meat and potatoes things, and there's all sorts of other things that we can look at. So today, I'm just kind of sharing with you a little bit about how we're slicing and dicing the information. So we look here. I'm like, okay, I've got my total project pipeline by the project amount. And I've got this now sliced and diced by my various divisions. All right. So I can kind of see that. Here I've got the same exact number, but it's by stage. So I can see, where my pipeline is by the lifecycle stage. Mm-hmm. I can view it in kind of funnel format to let me know where I'm at. And then over here, you'll see I'm starting to pull in what we called weighted project amount. And this is where the aggregate comes in. Now, again, these numbers are a little tricky because this demo set is for like a large general contractor. So if you're a mid-market architecture firm and you're doing 25 million in revenue, like all this scales. It's just don't get freaked out by the B's on the numbers. But you can see the difference when I start rolling up lots of forecasts and projects. You can see the difference in this case, 136 billion and $17 billion. Okay. And the reason that is because I'm leveraging that win and that go percentage to factor down my pipeline. Mm. So when I want to look at what's going to happen next year, what's going to happen this year, what are my revenues going to be, in the next 3 years? Where am I going to be? Leveraging those go and win percentages is going to give you a much better roll up of an accurate forecast.
It's going to average out. I mean, some projects are going to fall out, some are going to fall in. You're going to miss completely on some. You're going to get some you weren't necessarily expecting, but that's going to give you a good average when you've got a number of projects that it's going to come out to be pretty darn close to that number if you've got the right data in there.
Yep, 100%. So that's a kind of a foundational way to look at the difference. You can see the factor down, and you're exactly right. And the best practices is for you to be updating those win and go percentages mm-hmm. and project amount all the way through the life cycle to give the most accurate viewpoint. And then I can look at forecasting by dates. We talked about, I might want to see it by start date. So when is this project going to start? When am I going to start billing revenue on it? Right. And you can see that we've done that by start date here. So there's kind of project pipeline and weighted project pipeline. And then I can also look at by award date if I want to look at it booked. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we'll show you next time, just we're running out of time today, is to show you actually the month by month billing. Yep. Because when you can start looking at month by month revenue forecasting and compare that to your work in progress revenue billing, it is a tremendous amount of insights. Mm. So we'll share that with you next time. And next time we kind of talk about KPIs, but that's one of the neatest and coolest features that we've rolled out in TrebleHook. So again, all sorts of ways to slice and dice financial information. Other things I can do is I can add kind of an endless amount of filters. So imagine I'm in a executive meeting, and I'm talking to my various division leaders, and at 1:00 I've got my commercial team coming in, and then at 2:00 I've got my industrial team coming in, and I want to use the same dashboard to meet with every team. Well, no problem. All right, commercial's coming in at 1:00. Let's go ahead and filter out, everything for commercial. I can then go through and have a very active conversation with where we are in commercial. You'll see down here, I've actually pulled just an actual list view of some of the projects mm-hmm. if you want to dive into it. Yeah. And then, okay, now commercial team, you're out of here. Good job. Love you. Let's bring our environmental group in. Cool. Let's slice and dice information by environmental. So it's a neat way, again, kind of like we had one report driving lots of insights, one dashboard to drive lots of insights. And actually what you'll notice is that one report that we were looking at a second ago is actually driving all of these insights. So I created one report and I'm just bringing visualizations into a variety of different areas.
Yeah. People think you need like a bunch of different reports to get the data visualizations that you need. Not necessarily the case. We try to simplify it as much as possible. Keep it simple is one of our mantras. And this is one of the ways of driving that simplification.
Yep. And then similarly, just like on the reports, the ability to subscribe. So if I want to subscribe to this report and I want to have it, weekly on Mondays, at 6 a.m., I want this thing to come to me, and I want to copy my, whoever. I can have this report showing up in my email inbox, which is a pretty neat feature. So you got a meeting at 10 a.m. I want the latest and greatest in my email inbox at 9:30, so I can just open it up in the meeting. That's the purpose of subscription. Yep. So I'm gonna pivot just a little bit and talk about some insights. Okay, because we could talk for 3 hours on KPIs and reporting. I mean, it is such a deep topic, but today is just understanding foundationally, gathering the right information, assimilating the correct reporting structure that you can edit and review, and then using that reporting structure to visualize the insight. That's kind of what we're trying to leave y'all with today. But as I move down the list, I'm starting to grab some other insights that we can talk about. So I kind of talked about the list view again before. If I'm gathering the mandatory information, so think about as I move projects through the system. So I've won them, and in TrebleHook, when you win a job, the project actually converts to what we call a contracted project. Okay. It doesn't go away. It doesn't die. It doesn't leave the system, because ideally we want to have a uniform way of tracking projects from their earliest stage of conception all the way through closeout. Now, the reality is oftentimes you're going to be executing your design or construction jobs in your project management system or your accounting and ERP system, which is why we connect to those systems. So you can imagine what happens is you're tracking potential projects in TrebleHook. I win the job. I pass it over into, let's call it, Autodesk Build and Sage. And now my projects team and operations team is going to be executing the job. Well, TrebleHook connects to those systems. So as you're executing the job and you're updating the finish date and the project value and the people that work on it, we're actually bringing all that information back into TrebleHook, so that TrebleHook ends up being kind of the central source of truth for all of your current, future, and past projects. Well, if I have all the data insights of my current, future, and past projects into one system, now I can really start looking at some deep analytics. So I want to say, gosh, what's my win percentage, right? Like I think about all the projects I've won, like where do I have the highest win percentage by industry or by division? So you can see we've sliced and diced some information around these things. Where am I at profitability by division? So again, I'm running all these jobs and where am I profitable? Now, this is obviously a demo data set, because if I was looking at this, I would just say we're getting rid of every division of our company except grocery and interiors. But you get the point on the data is we can kind of see where we're tracking on profitability. If we want to start seeing some lagging indicators of like what's the average project size by division, I can start slicing that. So hey, how many projects has the commercial division done? The total amount. And all these insights, if you work through the systems, actually start formulating and helping you identify your ideal project profile. So the reality is, just by looking at this information, and again, this is demo data set, so it's a little bit squirrely, so bear with me. But when I look at I look at grocery and I look at interiors per se. Okay, well, those are probably likely both commercial projects. I can see my average project value is here, so it's a little bit smaller than the other projects, but they have much higher profit percentages. And I go over here and I look at my in the commercial space or in grocery, and I've got pretty high win percentages. So it starts telling a story that says that, hey, my most profitable work, even though it's about a third of the size, it's 4 to 5 times the profit, and I've got a pretty darn good win rate, right? Yep. Versus if I look in, let's call it, I don't know, higher education. I'm kind of doing this on the fly. I apologize here. But, higher education, I've got a larger project size. I don't even see any profitability, so that's not going to be helping me. And higher education, I actually have a high win rate. Mm-hmm. But either way, you can use your average win rates, you can use your profitability, average project size to start creating this ideal project profile. And similarly, the same sort of data insights you can use for like competitor analysis. Which competitors do I win the most against and why? Which architects do we get the most work from, and which architects do we have the highest probability? Which clients, what types of clients do we get the highest and best profitability and the fewest change orders? So you can start seeing, as you kind of take this infrastructure, if I have information on change orders and the design team and the contractor and the owner, all I have to do is slice and dice the data, and I can get all of these insights. And that's where you can start turning and accelerating the growth and profitability of your firm. I hosted a global call the other day for a group that I'm a part of in the construction industry. And we had some senior folks from Ernst & Young come speak about, what they're seeing in the industry. And one of the questions was, as the market has a little bit more pressure on it right now for a variety of reasons, we're not going to go into that today. As the market has a little bit more pressure on it, contractors are oftentimes, and architects and engineers, if you start seeing your revenue decline for any reason because of a slowdown, you're tempted to start going to adjacent markets. Well, man, I've been chasing, we're a commercial contractor and the market's going down, so I need to now get into industrial, or now I need to get into healthcare. And it was an interesting perspective of the Ernst & Young team is that when you start getting out of what you do best, you actually can degrade your business to some extent. And it's actually better to double down into the things that you do really, really well, that you can drive the highest profitability and the highest win rates. So by having those data insights to understand the best types of projects for you to pursue, you can start leaning deeper into your project pursuits, start tracking your pipelines by those types of projects and those types of customers, and figure out a way to grow where you can make the most money and be the most differentiated. Yeah. So some pretty cool things and how you can slice and dice data. Again, right now we're at a super high level. And then, also we start thinking about like some leading indicators. So, when you're building a pipeline, you need to be generating new project opportunities. I need to be go out and hunt and work, right? Mm-hmm. So a great indicator that we use is how many projects are we finding, yep. Right? Yep. And if you do if you go back and watch our leading indicator or KPI thing from last year, you'll see where we actually showed you the formulaic approach to find this. So, if in order for me to hit $100 million in revenue, I need to go find 10 $10 million jobs, and my win rate on these jobs is 25%, then that means I need to find 40 jobs. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, how many of those do I need to find in a particular month? And if you take 40 divided by 12, so you're going to get about 3 to 4 projects per month. So one of the things, if I'm tracking my pipeline, I'm tracking my growth metrics by division, I'm going to want to know how many new projects I need to be generating on a monthly basis in order to meet my performance goals. And what's really cool about that is if you're starting to see that number dip, that is a leading indicator that later in life, right, depending on how long your projects last, you might be lagging behind in revenue. So you want to try and find the earliest common denominator of some of these leading indicators that will drive your business forward so that you can manage to that. And if you manage to the right leading indicator, all of a sudden you're going to start seeing your average project size and your win rates kind of falling in line. So again, this is kind of getting a little complex. We can look at these things again in one report. I'm looking at number, I'm looking at value, slice and dicing by average project size like we did up above. So, just kind of as we wrap up, because I know we wanted to leave some time for some questions. I think, a couple thoughts that I have on this, John. Number one, we've got customers that are 25-person firms, and we have customers that are 1,000-person firms. It's all the same. It doesn't matter the size organization that you are. Obviously, the larger your organization and the more complex your organization, the higher the need for a system to run it. But any organization, you have to have a systematic approach to be building KPIs or reporting. And there's all sorts of things that we can do. And I would recommend that you go back and watch our webinar from last year where we actually talked about the science of dissecting a KPI and how to create it, understand conversion rates and all that sort of stuff. But in general, there's a few foundational elements. And number one is gathering, first off, understanding what you want to track, right?
So yeah, exactly. You've got to have a starting point.
Right. And you need to understand where you're trying to get to. So if I'm trying to grow my business by $100 million, okay, well, how are you going to get there? Well, what's my average project size? What's my win rate? By division, by department? How many projects do I need to be generating on a weekly or monthly basis? What's the average project value I need to pursue? Like what industries and competitors, blah, like all this stuff.
Yep.
So once you kind of understand the framework, you then focus on, building the information, right? So making sure that we're mandating, and mandate is such a tough word, but mandating in a super easy way, the ability to gather and collect information. So if you're not mandating the collection of data in your firm, you will never get the right insights into your business. You're never going to get there. So you got to make sure you're mandating it in, and it has to be done by more than just people being good stewards of the technology. You actually have to have the technology drive those mandatory fields for you. So if you do that and you're driving a culture of using the system, then you can then grab all the insights. You leverage reporting and everything to do updates and understand where the information is, dive into particular projects that you need to dive into, and then basically then just use that to tee up all your data insights. But the hardest thing is collecting the data.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, just general thought on today. And, so hopefully today gave users, or sorry, not users, but, our attendees, if you will, some insights, number one, into how we think about things, how TrebleHook as a platform thinks about collecting data insights, but then also some best practices. And if you're using one of the competitive tools in market, you're using Excel, you're using whatever, there's a few key things that you can do to start driving change in your business. And hopefully today is a means to think about that. So we're at 2:46. I know we wanted to reserve about 15 minutes for questions at the end. So I'm gonna stop sharing and open it up to see if we have any questions or comments that we can help you answer today. Yeah. So one of the questions was if we were going to start small, like what are a couple of the KPIs that we can track. So one of the foundational things is just revenue, right? I want to begin to find a way to start tracking my pipeline of the projects that I'm pursuing immediately, right? You can get to leading and lagging indicators later, but finding a centralized way to track and manage your project pipeline is probably one of the most foundational elements. It just gets the conversation going in your business. And then once you start doing that, you can start adding more and more data insights. You can always require more fields. As that data starts going through the system, you're going to start getting insights that you can use for future project performance. So I would say is really just starting there, just getting a unified way to just track your projects, get them all in the system and make sure that you can slice and dice them by how you would classify the project, some date information, right? So you can track it, and then revenue information. And that's kind of probably the foundation.
Yeah. And it's really when you look at your pipeline or your sales funnel or however you want to look at it, it's broken down by where you are in terms of the sales stages. So if I've got, a whole bunch of pipeline, but it's all in the lead stage, well, that's not as good as if I have a whole lot of pipeline and it's in the proposal stage, or submit for star. I'm looking for things that are closer to the bottom of the sales funnel, where it's like where I'm moving projects through the project lifecycle, so that everything isn't on the lead stage. We're progressing to opportunity, to proposal, to award contract, all the way through to win. So you want to see a nice healthy pipeline, and you want to see a good distribution where you're moving closer to win. And you're looking at that over certain months or quarters.
Yep. I see a question coming in from about Builder and what's the differentiation between the systems. So yeah, Builder is one of the competitors that we see in market. We've heard good things about them, and you'll never hear us talk bad about our competition. We're very I'll call it in tune with a lot of our competition and where they fit and where they don't. And I would just say generally, and not specific to the one that you asked about, but just generally as it relates to TrebleHook. I mean, there's some major advantages that we have, and what we talked about today is definitely a major advantage. Requiring information through the life cycle, making it easy to leverage and get data in, to leverage our dashboarding reporting, to slice and dice that information any way that you see fit. We talked about kind of being built on that underlying force.com engine per se, and that gives us ultimate scalability to basically solve any problem that we want, and customizability. And I'll just say, kind of speak to the customizability for a second. One of the and maybe take this off CRM for a second, and just let's talk about it in general. Every business out there does a lot of stuff that's the same. But every business has some nuances. Mm-hmm. Every business is a little bit unique. And so when you implement technology, whether it's your accounting system or your HRIS system or whatever, you want a system that speaks to your company, right? If you have to just completely change and adapt to the technology that you purchased, you're going to have some rubs. So the ideal blend is that you take the best practices from the technology that you've purchased, you combine that with some of the nuances in your organization, and you bring those things together into a kind of semi-customized system that is purpose-built for your business. And one of the things that we do is we're able to do that without spending lots and lots and lots of time and money to get there, because we've already got most of the best practices out of the system. So yeah, I would just say that's one of the competitors. We tend to bump into them from time to time, and definitely some differences on our side. So thanks for that question.
Yeah, I'd point to the if you all want to just kind of look up Salesforce App Exchange, that's really another advantage. That there's a lot of, if you think about it, if Salesforce has the leading, probably 26-28% of the world market of CRM is owned by Salesforce. Number two is Microsoft Dynamics. They're down at like 6 or 8%. So it's not even really that close. So Salesforce is the number one CRM in the world by quite a bit. And they have what they call the Salesforce App Exchange, where there's literally thousands of apps that are pre-built, or some are free, some are paid. But they want to connect to Salesforce. If you think about it, if you have an app that you want to work with a CRM, the very first one that you're going to try to optimize it for is going to be Salesforce, because they do own so much of the market. Yep. So that's the other thing. It's really the connectivity, the openness of the Salesforce platform that allows us to connect to different systems and build. So that's another thing too. I mean, it's really eye-opening when you go in and you put in, mobile card scanner for Salesforce or something, and you've got like 12 different options, and there are all these cool things that you can do, and it's kind of like choose your own adventure.
Well, I think that's, just strategically for us, that's one of the things that we're really working on is everybody's after this one piece of software that can do everything inside of your business. And maybe one day it'll get there. Maybe it'll all be just replaced by AI, and all you'll do is talk, and you'll get all the data insights. And actually, some of that is true. And we can talk about the future of AI and automation later, because I'm super
we'll have a webinar on
passionate about that. That's coming up later this summer, because we've got some pretty cool visions for how AI is going to change the way that we all work. But until we get there, we believe that every business is going to be run off of a handful of purpose-built applications that are connected to one another. Mm-hmm. So, we've got project management systems and accounting systems and HR systems and CRM systems. And you've seen certain vendors coming out, accounting organizations that add CRM. And what you always hear is that their accounting stuff is good, the CRM's kind of okay. Yep. Well, what you want to do is you want to end up giving each of your teams the best-in-class tools and then ultimately connect. So where we're going is really to drive connection to the ecosystem. And I can share some things that we're working on. I had a call yesterday with a team from OpenAsset. So digital asset management for the AEC space. We already have a connection with OpenAsset where we can push data into their system, and you can leverage it for creating resumes and proposals, et cetera. Working with client savvy. So we've got a lot of customers that are working on client feedback and data insights. We actually did a podcast with them last week. Super cool conversation, but having connection there. Connection to tools like Procore or the Autodesk Build platform, having connections to tools like the Deltek ecosystem, or thinking about CMIC, connections to tools like Ignite on document management or SharePoint and Outlook. So, what you're going to want to be looking for, and there's a really cool, selecting the right CRM for your business ebook that we put together. But we want to be able to connect to all of the pieces of technology to be able to centralize that data and then leverage dashboarding and reporting and insights for it. So, just another difference is we kind of think about and what you should expect. And the reality is there's tons of technology out there, tons and tons and tons and tons. Yeah. And you're starting to see some of it converge, but you're still going to want to make sure you have the best in class solutions for your teams that ultimately connect to one another. And I think that's a huge strength of ours. So cool. Well, I don't see any more questions coming in. We're at 2:54, and I'm sure if we gave you all 6 minutes back in your day, you could probably find something to do with it. So, as we kind of close, John, this was a great conversation. This is really fun to talk about dashboards and reports. Every company is a little bit different. You just got to figure out where to start. Don't start huge. Start small. Get a system that's going to help you drive it, whether it's our system or not. We'd love to work with you, but if you choose something else, start small, drive that utilization and adoption. And we've got some more cool stuff coming up in the summer and fall on some insights that I think will help everybody out. So just stay tuned for our webinar series and look out for some pretty exciting announcements coming down the pike. So John, anything else we missed?
No, just really appreciate the enthusiasm for the subject and for joining us here today. So for both the customers who are on the call today and for those who just wanted to learn and those who might be interested in TrebleHook, love to talk to you. So thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you.